For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Mixed picture, as usual, from Asia Pacific, quite honestly. Although a lot of them are gaining, a lot of stocks there are gaining a bit of confidence from the fact that the Fed, as you know, didn't raise rates very aggressively when it reported. It's only about 0.25%, but that's been enough to give it a certain amount of optimism, as has the private cakes-in production managers index. It showed that industrial activity picked up in China. And China's Tencent is also wishing to expand into Singapore to take advantage of opening borders and more Chinese tourists going there using ride-hailing apps, for example, which they are diversifying into as far as their relationship with Singaporean companies is concerned. So bright trade prospects, I think, from Asia Pacific, even though it's not necessarily reflected in stocks right as we speak. As far as the Adani Group is concerned, you remember we talked about it yesterday on the Mumbai Stock Exchange. It was down about 35%. It's down at least 30% on the year. The man himself, Gautam Adani, who's facing allegations of corruption and the rest of it, and stock manipulation, has lost about $59 billion worth of his own personal fortune as a result of this. The case continues. As I was saying yesterday, I think what's going to happen is that the Indian equivalent of the SEC will get involved and start to pick the company apart as far as these allegations are concerned. Let's turn our attention to the United States, and big tech blues really was the bottom line there. The US Fed's smaller interest rate rise acted quite well, really. So Apple, however, though, saw sales drop by 5%. I'm just going to rush through them. Alphabet missed on its own earnings. That's the Google owner. YouTube fell short, as did Google. Amazon beat some of what analysts were expecting, and Meta shares were generally up as a result of, in fact, Meta shares had one of the best days in a decade. Mark Zuckerberg was on stage, as it were, and he was actually saying that the company is going to get better and be run more efficiently. And I'll finally round it off with Starbucks. They've been slightly hit because of the problems in China. China's its second largest market, and slightly, so a slight blues feeling across these kind of big results, which were eagerly awaited yesterday. Right, let's talk about the IMF, and the IMF is being urged by allies of Ukraine to approve more money. The EU has earmarked 16 billion, already at 18 billion for this. Ukraine needs 38 billion. It's hoped that pressure from some of Ukraine's allies will force the IMF to act. And if the IMF does act, they think that it will actually encourage other donors to reconstruct the country. The ECB now, Christine Lagarde, she cautiously, I mean, it's a difficult one to get right. This, I think they were conditionally hawkish. They're still saying that they need to contain inflation, but I mean, it's going to be really interesting in March. Actually, they're meeting there as to what they do with interest rates, because what they don't want to do is strangle off the weak growth in the EU right now. But that's the message that they gave yesterday, along with their 0.5% rise. The UK, similar 0.5% rise from the Bank of England. Sunak, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak is saying that Britain cannot afford to give what he calls massive pay rises for nurses. Meanwhile, the Bank of England, as I said, it raised interest rates 0.5% yesterday, but Andrew, that was a 7-2 majority of the 9-person rate-setting board, so rates up to 4%, but still the Bank of England and Andrew Bailey very worried about strangling growth and so on, and they are also predicting that inflation may fall to within a target of 2% sometime next year. The UK is also in competition with a lot of other countries, particularly the EU as a bloc, to attract crypto businesses to London. What they're proposing, and they haven't finished it yet, but they are proposing new regulations which will subject cryptocurrencies to the same or similar kind of regulation that other financial sectors have to endure. And oil prices basically in no man's land at the moment. Just the feeling of a soft and shallow recession, not doing a great deal. We need some more positive news out of China, I think, to affect that. And as far as cryptos are concerned, I mean, what cryptocurrencies are gaining on the fact that the rest of the financial world is sort of just slightly risk-on mood. In other words, going to riskier assets, and Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptos are actually benefiting from that. That's the global view this morning.
Real quickly, I'd like to talk about Adani, because what is really happening here is that an American company is attacking one of the biggest companies out of Asia, saying there's fraud in the system. This is the Heidelberg Research company. And now the stocks are plummeting. Yesterday, there was a private sales of shares for some possible investors. 2.5 billion was raised, and Adani had to return the money, coming out to say, because of this crisis. So is this the West attacking the rise of India? Because as Heidelberg put out empirical proof to what is really calling out in the Adani group?
I think your suspicions are probably right. I mean, it may well be an attack. I think what I prefer to do is wait until we've heard the investigation that will no doubt follow this, as to what Hindenburg's motives actually are, and how correct they are as far as Adani's concerned. I really do feel we have to wait for that investigation. I think it'll be fairly full and frank and so on. But I feel that we should wait. I think it would be wrong at this stage. It looks like exactly what you're saying, but I think it would be wrong at this stage to draw too many conclusions until a full probe actually takes place and we see all the evidence of what's going on. But as you were saying yesterday, it adds to the argument of stopping short selling, doesn't it?
All right, Michael, so let's go to the UK and the Bank of England's reports, particularly what's projected by the Bank of England, estimating a 0.7% growth in the UK by 2025. Compared to the decades before COVID, that's less than half, 1.7%. Now, what for me is quite interesting is the fact that they've identified a shrunken workforce as one of the major reasons for this projection. And, the apathy of, people of working age in the UK, about 80% of them not wanting to go into work. For the UK government, this poses quite a big challenge. What are some of the incentives to get people of work age back to work or interested in going to work?
No politician, as far as I know, certainly not within my lifetime, has succeeded in that. I think there is a shrunken workforce, but I think also what the UK is very bad at is productivity. It is the lowest in the G7, and that's a magic pill that tends to work. And there was get more work out of an existing number of people actually at work, and nobody has achieved that in Britain, and it's very, very difficult to achieve in any countries as well. And how you get people, specifically since the introduction of those furlough giveaways, how you get them actually back to work is a mystery. I mean, either you feel it or you don't, and you've got to make going back to work worthwhile. Now, whether that means cutting benefits or not, and I don't think any politician is going to be brave enough to do that, because as Sunak was saying last weekend in a lot of newspaper articles, when he was Chancellor, he was happy to give this money away, but he knew it would come back and bite him when it had to be paid for. And I think that's what he's seeing right now. So I think the big concern from the Bank of England, yes, they will get the rate of inflation down, but they're very, very worried about the cost of living within the system, and I think that's probably their biggest worry. They don't want to. The same as in the United States, and the same with the EU. They want to bite down on inflation, but they don't want to strangle the economy at the same time. Very, very difficult trick to pull off. And you're absolutely right to concentrate on this shrunken workforce. I would add productivity, lack of in that equation as well.
Well, two quick things, Michael. The first one, the Adani Group. Gautam Adani used to boast that the Adani Enterprises is too big to fail. And when that report came from the short seller, Hindenburg, he said, well, this was an attack on India. But it's not only Hindenburg that pointed out the accounting fraud and, going to safe havens. Fitch, the Fitch Group, in August 2022, made a similar claim. So it looks like those, companies, they've won against Adani. But the issue is, how does this affect India? Experts are saying that the government of Narendra Modi will have to bail out the Adani Group because of the implications from the middle class that is heavily exposed, for the national insurance company, and also the reputational damage to India Incorporated. What do you think? Secondly, Shell just posted the biggest profit in its 115 years, over $40 billion. This week, ExxonMobil reported 56 billion. The only company we're still expecting from is Total Energies, hopefully by next week. Now, in England, people are saying, look, these companies should be taxed more. But I know you have your reservations about that. But with these outrageous, profits that the unions are complaining about, do you still hold that position?
I do. I mean, I don't like this word outrageous, if I may say so, because I don't think it is. I mean, it's just a fact of life. The energy prices are rising because of all the reasons that we know, and these companies have profited upon that. I, as I always do, take you back to 2020, April the 20th, 2020, when the oil price was negative and these companies were not making money. I'm not speaking in support of them. I'm just talking about the reality of it. I think what's going to be far more interesting is to see, and I was saying this yesterday when these results came out from Shell. Yes, you're absolutely right to highlight them, but what I think is going to be interesting is how the amount of cash that they're generating helps them to transition to their renewable energy targets, of which I still understand in this country particularly are 2030. What they are in other parts of the world, I'm not quite sure. But that is the interesting thing. And a diversified company like Shell, however much it actually makes in profit, that is going to be the interesting thing. How they use that pile of cash to get to their renewable targets. As far as Adani is concerned, I would just repeat what I was saying to Rifai earlier on, that we wait to see. I think it's done a lot of reputational damage to India. Modi needs to speak out. I see that everybody's going to get caught up in this, but it will take time. And I'd much prefer to wait until the official investigation, which there will surely be, and if there's not, they're in a lot of trouble, but there will surely be an official investigation. Until that takes place, I'd prefer to keep my powder dry on it, to be honest.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much.